Every year, over 100 million animals are used for testing. I'll give you an example of this testing being used in a certain place in Silver Springs. This was actually a case run on the monkeys that were being held in a testing facility. And basically these monkeys were being held in places where they really weren't in clean cages, clean environments. Their cages were covered in fecal matter and their own waste. And when they were being tested on, they were basically being held in these traps so they couldn't move or do anything while they were being tested on and experiencing this pain. So many products that everyone uses every day, like cosmetics, sometimes even food, or household chemicals like glass cleaner, can even be used commonly for animal testing. The info that I'm going to use and describe to you today will be referred from scholarly articles as well as my own knowledge gained from previous research and just in general what I've acquired over time. So we should recognize that this is a pretty big growing issue. The restrictions are being set in place, but they're not as strong as they should be. But if we were to heighten these restrictions and add more laws, we might even see animal testing come to an end. Once we do this, we could try to find an alternate way to test these, and we actually are doing that right now. And we should know that these animals need to be treated like they should be and used in a way that doesn't hurt them, and so they can live in their natural habitats. Many companies abuse these animals instead of actually letting them live their lives normally. And one group, PETA, actually talks about this. They say in cruelty to animals, they talk about the neglect. So basically they go on to talk about the ways they can be used. They actually spray these animals with chemicals, or they'll put them in certain environments that they may not behave naturally in, and then they see the reaction to these products that they're testing them with. And then pretty much once they're done with them, they sit in these cages and they suffer, and then they bring them back out and they test more products on them. And basically after this, these animals really can't live on their own, and so they either die of like the natural causes that come from the products, or they will be euthanized on the spot and they just killed because they can't live on with the harm that's been done to them. So, I mean, it's clear to see that these animals don't really get the treatment that they need. They experience horrible testing, a lot of animal cruelty, and these testers have no regard for their well-being. And so many people actually will say that there's laws put in place that restrict the use of animal testing. And in the New England Anti-Vivisection talks about these laws. And they talk about it in the article Animals in Science or Research. And they go on to talk about how they restrict the types of animals you can use, or the tests that you can do on them, or the products that you can use on them. So now that we've learned about how these animals are treated, we will look at alternate methods that they use for treatment. So there are other options that you can use instead of testing on these animals. Hartung and Gruber talk in Alternatives to Animal Experimentation and Basic Research about these different tests. So there's a lot of different things like DNA sampling, where you take the tissue that you want to test on, basically use the product on that, and then you can see what happens without really harming an animal or harming a person, because you can take a DNA sample instead of actually using their own skin that's on them. They also have many things like virtual simulators, and these basically take in information about what's happened in the past, what they've seen before, and then you can see what the chemical might do once it's put in place with the body. They also use stem cell research, where they just take stem cells and use the chemicals on those, and you can see what might actually happen, and this actually doesn't harm the person or any animals at all. And then they have in vitro, which are test tube methods, which are basically the same thing. You might take a certain sample of DNA, maybe saliva or something, and see the reaction that it might have with the product that's being used. So this tells us that we really don't even have to use animals or living organisms in general. We can actually use these tests instead and get the same results pretty much. A lot of people might say that these virtual simulators might not give the same reactions that are pretty much unpredictable, because every person's made differently and every animal's made differently, so you might not get the results that could be unpredictable. Howes, Porritt, Rule, and O'Collins talk on these tests not being as responsive, and can animal models of disease reliably inform human studies? They go on to say that you might not be able to get the same reactions in every strain of the specific species. So if you test on one human, they might not have the same reaction as another to to that one product. And so you kind of have to get a wide array of what might actually happen. Now that we have discussed these alternate methods, we will go on to say that some animals don't even give the same results that people can. So, Mehta, Joshi, Ratnor, and Sharma talk about how some animals might not even have the same proper reactions and substitute of animals in drug research. So these animals, as you can tell when you see them, such as dogs, they don't have the same hair as humans. And a lot of them, like birds, don't have the same skin. And so when we test on them, we might not get the right results because we're testing on animals that don't really have the same DNA and the same genetic makeup that we do. And so this can lead to varying effects, and even when a human uses it, they can have certain reactions that they never even thought would occur based on their testing results with animals. So basically, a lot of people might say you can't test on people. A lot of them would say that's unethical, and we can't really use humans because of that. The Animal Research Information Group writes about how we cannot test on humans in their frequently asked questions articles. And basically they go on to say that a lot of people might not even volunteer in research because all responses have to be voluntary. And so when they're asked to do things like surgery or other operations that might change their genetic appearance or their internal organs, they probably won't volunteer because of that. And so that's pretty much a lot of people's reasonings on why you can't test on humans. And so now that we've discussed some of the reasons why testing should be outlawed, we will discuss ways to solve these problems. So one way you can try to change this is by writing to your government official. Contacting them in any way possible really can help them learn about their citizens' views on what they think, and then they can actually relay that to their fellow government officials, and then they can possibly put together a bill or a local legislature, and they can actually get rid of these animal cruelty situations and add more restrictions. You could also join certain organizations like PETA. These animal activist groups help go into these situations and free these animals. They'll actually go in, buy the entire lot that are being experimented on, and then help take care of them so they can actually get back to health. Now, some people might say that our government's already been involved. They've already taken the actions that are needed. And then you can see this in things like the Animal Welfare Act. And actually, Schultz writes on the regulations of the Animal Welfare Act about these different laws that are put in place. And one says that you can't use certain animals like dogs. Well, a lot of people will take that as kind of a big outline on what you can't use and then go for the animals that you can, like rats, mice, and birds. And basically there's no regulations on those animals at the moment. So now that we've gone over what you can try to do to help out, we'll go over what the world might be like if we didn't have animal testing. So imagine if we did not have to depend on the harming of these animals to get the results that we need. We could transition from a point that uses actual live animals or live subjects in general to a point where we only need DNA samples or virtual tests to actually get these results. If we don't know what's happening on the inside and we don't hear what's happening, we won't be able to actually get out and get rid of these animal experiments. So we basically need to take as much action as we can and actually put forth some effort and help out these animals so they're not in these environments. So now that we see that we need to give these animals the life that they deserve, I want you to think about the changes that you will make so you can actually help them achieve those goals. So I hope you all think about next time when you're looking at a product on the shelf, what might actually have gone into achieving that product being there. The experimentation on animals or on certain organisms, and maybe they did go in a better route and use alternate methods, but a lot of times they'll actually use these animals because it's just easier. Remember that these animals are suffering for basically our benefit. So when we get these products, all we're doing is helping those people test more. So I urge you to contact your officials or even donate or help volunteer at your local animal organization. And whatever you do, it's a positive act, and you're helping out these animals.